invest in people in the long term, there has to be a mutual understanding.
Hustle hard, hustle hard. Closed mouths don't get fed. Thinking strategically, but acting like a gorilla is the kind of marketing that's small. The planet innovates very little, is highly risk averse, and indicates
Excited to be with you tonight. It is always a bittersweet for me to be here in the last kind of sort of lecture-ish class where I get to share leadership content with you to hopefully edify you along your leadership journey. You all have done a great job this semester, and that is an affirmation. And we're going to talk about how affirmations help, but more specifically, because these more specificity you can give it an affirmation, the more impactful it is. I genuinely enjoyed the role plays. I thought that everybody did a great job with their role plays. I think you all worked well together. Tonight, we're shifting from, if you remember, and I'll try to lay this out for you because it's very important. We began the semester talking about what is leadership? Why is leadership important? What are the dimensions of leadership? And then we moved to the leader as an individual. We talked about traits and behaviors that leaders have that help them be more impactful, or more effective is a word that we've been using a lot in the realm of leadership. And if leadership is a process of influencing people to attain organizational goals, the attainment of the goal is really what we're looking for. And effectiveness is defined by attaining the goal. So as leaders, who we are, how we present ourselves, the traits, characteristics, behaviors, attitudes we have impact our ability to be effective. Yet we moved into another aspect of leadership, not just looking at ourselves, looking at the situation. How do we adjust ourselves based on the situation? Very important to understand that. And then from the situation, we have to then say, okay, we can lead ourselves, we can adjust to the situation. Now, how do we lead in a political dynamic? How do we understand leadership politics? How do we build the political behaviors into some of our day-to-day activities so that we can continue to grow and influence? And power and leadership, it's almost inseparable. To take power and leadership and to take them apart, it's almost impossible. And the term power has a lot of negative stigma and connotation to it, but it can be used for good. And make sure we understand that. To leverage and use power to be influential in leadership, and doing it in an honest and ethical way is the way we want to go about it. So then we looked at power, we looked at politics, and then we moved from power and politics to now how do we use tactics, within the realm of leadership, which kind of is more granular, ingratiating, leading by example, being able to manage up and talking to our boss's boss and build a relationship with them. How do we write? How do we speak? How do we tactically do things in order to influence other people? Then moving from power, politics, and tactics, then we looked last class at teams. Now, how do we lead teams? Because teams are different. We talked about designing teams. We talked about giving teams a compelling mission or a compelling goal. We looked at the dynamics of the different types of teams and the interdependencies. We looked at the example of a softball team or a baseball team versus an orchestra versus a jazz ensemble, and also a doubles tennis team, which is a fundamental, fascinating thing to understand the interdependencies. It's not just, oh, we're interdependent. What you do affects me. That's good. It's helpful, but to what extent does it affect you? Can I perform in my own individual way, and my performance and my ability to perform isn't hindered by your performance? That would be a softball team. Versus my ability to perform is going to be completely contingent on your ability to perform. Like if you can't pass me the ball, I can't take a shot. So that's kind of those differences, and I think that's really important to understand. And tonight, one of my favorite subjects, it was a subject of mine that I was very interested in grad school. When I was at an MBA program at Oklahoma State University, we had to sort of have a level of master thesis, if you would, of an avenue in which we were going to try to specialize. I had a minor in entrepreneurship, and with that minor, I was really consumed by the question: is how do I motivate staff members that are in positions of labor, people that are doing mundane work, mechanistic work that is very difficult to reward. We're talking about manual labor. We're talking about driving lawnmowers and cleaning pools and building homes, and just the same routine, monotony every day. It's hot. It's difficult. How do you motivate people in those conditions? And how can you do that well and continuously? And through understanding that question, or through searching for answers to that question, I got very much fixated on motivation. And motivation and influence are just like, influence and power. Motivation and influence go hand in hand as well. So tonight we're going to talk about, and we're going to dig deep into two, possibly three theories of motivation. And the theories of motivation are very important because you're going to see yourself in these theories. And what we'll also talk about too, which is a fun subject, is employee engagement. and what it means to be engaged, why employee engagement is important. And we'll talk through some of those parameters. And then lastly, we're going to speak about coaching, how we coach staff members, how coaching is important within an organization, what executive coaching is, and how that's helpful. And that's pretty much it. So it's a powerful subject, and I think it's relatable subject. I'm going to start off like this, and I just have a couple of, I guess, core questions to get you thinking about stuff. And this particular question is about engagement. And we'll define that in a second, but I want you to answer this question. When have you felt fully engaged in something you were doing? Experiencing this flow as if time just kind of passes by. When have you felt fully engaged in something you were doing is one question. And the second part of that question is, what made you care that much? Like, why were you fully engaged? And think about it. If you had meaning in your work and it seemed like everybody thought that meaning was really important, and you did work extra hard and you stayed in the office extra late, but you weren't necessarily rewarded or recognized for it, then the meaning in that task, it might be depleted if socially it's not rewarded in any regard. I mean, even your parents don't say great job, and nobody likes your post on Facebook when you put them up there and explain people what you're doing. I mean, there's a level of meaning that at times it can be truly intrinsic, yeah, but it definitely comes, I would assume, that it's difficult to maintain that level of output unless you have some kind of reward or unless you get some kind of recognition for the extra hours of effort, time, energy, and effort that you've spent in that task. When we think about expectancy, there's three elements to it, and we'll define this later, but I want to try to do it now as well. So expectancy, instrumentality, and balance. So expectancy is basically saying that if I did something that I'm going to be good at it. Like there's a level of knowing that if I'm going to teach a subject, that I can do it well. And when I do it well, that I will get recognized for it. And the thing that I get recognized for, whether it be money or an affirmation, that I actually value that. So let me bring that back again. Jake wants to build a car. When he has a broken car in his garage, he knows that if he was going to he knows that if he engaged in the task of trying to fix this car, that he could actually do it. Meaning, even before you step into the arena, you're like, hey, I think if I really applied, I can do something here. So that is the beginning of the expectancy theory that we're going to talk about. Then you say to yourself that when I do it, that I'm going to get some kind of attaboy, or maybe I get to drive the car, or maybe I get to sell the car or something like that. And in addition to that, what that does for me, the attaboy or selling the car or get to drive the car, I actually value that. So there's three levels of it. And when we think about motivation, you think about expectancy, this is the most powerful concept. And understanding all three of them, they all matter. Just because the reward is $100,000, it doesn't mean, okay, so let's look at it this way. If you offered me right now to enter a national spelling bee contest, that the first place reward is going to be $100,000, it would mean nothing to me because I know right from the start that I'm not a good speller and there's no chance that I'm going to do well in that contest. So I'm out. Like my initial instrumentality, it's called, already puts me at a place where, yeah, I'd like the $100,000, but I'm not even going to try. So so that's the beginning part of it. And let's just say that I was a decent speller and I went into that spelling bee task, and that when I was offered the $100,000, I don't even value the $100,000. It doesn't really mean anything to me. So in the process of trying to win the contest, there's a chance I might give up along the way because the reward is something that I don't even value. Here's a question about goals. What kind of goals push you forward without overwhelming you? You have a goal, and your goal might not be, so you could have this crazy goal, like you want to be a millionaire. Okay, fine. But then you break down that goal into 10 different steps of getting a job and working the job for 5 years, saving money, all this kind of stuff. When you think about your goals, what are some goals that you have on a regular basis that don't necessarily overwhelm you? Can anybody give me an example? They push you, but they don't overwhelm you. You'd be overwhelmed if you signed up for an Ironman triathlon. And that might be an overwhelming goal, but it may not be overwhelming. And this is the whole point I'm trying to say, I'm going to wake up and go for a run tomorrow. So that goal might motivate you, but it doesn't necessarily overwhelm you. So we're going to talk about this dichotomy with goals and how important it is with our goals that we set the right kind of goals, that they're timely, that they're specific, and that they are not goals that overwhelm us, because overwhelming us would demotivate us. They're goals that motivate us, and they're goals that are manageable without overwhelming us. A lot of times it's hard for me to understand that I have the autonomy over how I set my personal goals. But for whatever reason, I don't spend enough time laying them out and doing it in a way that's honest and true to myself and also pushing myself to that point. So we're going to talk about coaching tonight as well and the value of having a good coach. A good coach could very well be a boss. It could be a third party hired coach that you have, or it could be a good friend of yours that you've almost formally engaged in this process of let's hold each other accountable. The coaching modality when you're in a CrossFit gym and how that helps because a lot of times coaches can call you out. They can bring out the best in you. And the best in you usually means taking your goal that you might have for yourself and either tampering it down like, hey, I know that you want to do XYZ today, but let's start here and then maybe we'll build up. Or vice versa, saying, hey, you've been doing this for 6 weeks now, and I know you have more in you. So let's try to take that goal and move it up a notch. So goals, our internal goals are important. And then also the goals that people work with us as a coach are also very important. So it's a great process and you should very well take into consideration how impactful giving other people goals are. Meaning, would it be right for me to just go ahead and give you a goal and not engage you in the conversation about what this goal is, why it's important, what do you think your goal should be? How should we work on this together? So these are things that, if we fail to do this as leaders, we're failing to do some of the basic things that will make our job and everyone else's job a little bit easier. So this is what we're going to talk about tonight, and it's motivation. There's two other components. We talked about coaching as well, so there's one other component, and it's recognition. And this is a powerful one because it's meaningful. Recognition is how important is it for you to feel like somebody sees you and somebody acknowledges your work and says, "Thank you, nice job, do it again," or "I'm proud of you," or whatever that is. In the Five Love Languages, which is a wonderful book, I forget the author of it, but one of them is words of affirmation. And words of affirmation, it's words of affirmation, giving gifts, acts of kindness, physical touch, and um, quality time. And the words of affirmation is a very strong one for a lot of people because it does elicit a level of emotion and connection and trust with the people that you work with. And if you get a word of recognition or an affirmation from a boss, sometimes that has just as much, if not more power than a spouse or a family member, because you spend so much time with the boss and you're actually performing under the boss's leadership. So the boss is really there to either affirm or disaffirm your performance. And when they affirm it, your confidence goes up. When your confidence goes up, your relationships and your family life go up. When your relationship and family life go up, you aspire to set goals that are a little bit more difficult. And when you set goals that are more difficult and you attain them, you get promoted in your career. And it's a cycle of performance in one's life. So words of recognition and just recognition in general is an extremely powerful form of motivation. And we'll unpack the science of that tonight as well. So let's go. Let's do it. And then 60 through 75, these are the people that are, super engaged in what they're doing. You are intensely engaged and involved in your work and job, which should contribute substantially to your job satisfaction as well as your job performance. So being in an area, for instance, 30 through 59, isn't necessarily a bad thing. There's things you can do to become more engaged. This is the point. It's just kind of give a baseline of your level of engagement at your work. And then certainly as a leader, and we'll read some stats about what this means to be engaged. So thank you for participating in that. Hopefully that gave you some idea. Even if you just answer those questions in your head, you can tell whether or not, you're engaged. So engagement is the commitment workers make to their employer. So that's what engagement is. And so there's a few stats in here, and I want to make sure that I put these stats out there. It says gaining commitment is important because a study conducted in 142 countries found that 63%, this is crazy, 63% of workers are not fully engaged with their work. So it's not fully work engaged. So if you just thought about that for a second, and it demonstrates a need for leadership in and of itself, because I would go ahead and say, and I'll ask this question in general, is it a manager's job to motivate and engage employees, or is it the employee's job to be motivated and engaged? So there's two sides to that to think through. It's the manager's job to motivate and engage employees would be one thing that says, hey, it's the manager's job. The leader, the manager, the boss should be the one to motivate and engage staff members versus not really. The manager doesn't really have that as their core responsibility. It really should be the core responsibility of the employee to be engaged and to be motivated. And so this argument has been happening often in the leadership and management software and I software. the leadership and management scholarship. And the realm of the leader and the managers should be a priority to engage and motivate staff members is where I fall. And let me explain why. The leader and manager has the resources and has the authority to shape the environment in which the employees work. And when you can shape the environment and shape the circumstance, which we learned about teams last week, you have a lot of ability to engage and motivate staff members. So, yeah, it might not be 100% your job, but you certainly have more control over, again, the environment and the tasks and um, the attitudes that you have and the things that you can do, the tactics that you can do to influence people. Whereas if you're a staff member, yeah, you can bring your best self to work every day. But if you're working in a hole that's 95 degrees and nobody's talking to you and your employee, your boss is just kind of belittling you throughout the day and throwing crackers at you, like whatever terrible circumstance you can imagine, you as an employee, you can't change that. You can't pay yourself more or change your environment or change your boss because you have not as much control. So again, my point is that the leader and the manager and the boss in a situation usually has more autonomy over the circumstances and the conditions of the work environment. So therefore, I assert that it's the manager's duty to engage and to motivate staff members, and that should be a priority of theirs. Regardless of how motivated and engaged the staff members are, the manager should still choose it as at their level. So my point in saying that is if you're looking at this stat that says 63% of workers are not fully engaged with their work, what I'm saying to myself is there's a void of leadership and management. There's a void of these conversations happening in the work environment. It's not working well enough. And so some of these stats, which are crazy to understand, is that engagement directly leads to performance at work. The more engaged staff members are, the better they perform. It's almost unequivocally true that your level of engagement it correlates with performance. So some study found that 13% of employees were engaged and 24% actively disengaged. Actively disengaged. They're not only not fully engaged, they're actively disengaged. So being actively disengaged takes work to be completely disengaged. So this is a fun study here. It demonstrates the point of if you're listening to this conversation, why should you focus on engaging staff members? Well, a study found that companies with high ratio of engaged to disengaged employees, so basically more employees engaged and less employees disengaged, had 140% higher earnings per share. So clearly demonstrating that engagement leads to performance. A key link between leadership, motivation, and coaching techniques and engagement is that leaders need to use motivation and coaching techniques to keep employees engaged. We'll talk about some what those techniques are tonight. And a survey of 1,000 employees found that leaders giving positive feedback to employees fostered engagement. So the beginning of this chapter, when it talks about engagement, is building the case for why we should focus on efforts to motivate our staff members. And so the next thing we talk about, so now that we understand engagement, okay, cool. We want our employees to be engaged, Professor Kershner. Thank you so much. How do we do that? The next slides and the next portion of the chapter talk about meaningful work. So one of the things that we can consider when we're building our teams and building our organizations is how are we injecting meaning into the everyday tasks at this work environment? My wife works at the hospital, and she often shares stories about patients needing care, and she shares stories about, I mean, the essence of her meaning behind what she does and how she comes home from work some days exhausted, but the exhausted nature I could tell is actually meaningful to her, meaning she's meaningfully exhausted. Yes, she's tired. Yes, she had a long day, but what she did mattered. And so the effort that she put in, nobody needed to tell her great job, or nobody needed to tell her, you're going to get a raise, but she did it anyway. So, and we talked about that at the beginning of class. So a key driver of worker engagement is the opportunity to perform meaningful work. So is the work I'm doing meaningful is a major question. And if not, how can we make it more meaningful? The feeling of doing work that matters or makes a difference. So obviously with the research question that I proposed to you in the beginning of the class of how do we get people that are doing laborious or labor-driven jobs to find meaning in their work? Well, I don't know. How do you get a person to find meaning in landscaping? Well, it may sound trite to explain it this way, but landscaping isn't just landscaping. You're actually cultivating the curb appeal of a neighborhood or an environment. Okay, Claude, that's kind of silly. All right, cool. Well, if you can do a good job at this, what you could do is you could become a crew leader. And as a crew leader, you can help the people on your team perform better and coach them and maybe sit in the car with them every once in a while, listen to their personal issues. And you might be older than them, and you might be able to speak wisdom and truth into their life. You can have an impact on the people who work on your team. If you're good at cutting the grass, you become a crew leader. If you're a crew leader, you can have the virtuous job of a leader. And as a leader, you could speak truth and wisdom into other people's lives. Is that meaningful? No, that's not meaningful. Okay, fine. So think about the fact that you have a customer. Her name is Mrs. Betts, and she's 90 years old, and all of her family, nobody wants to talk to her and her family. They've all, she's old, and she lives in the Keys, and unfortunately people don't respond to her, and they just kind of put her in the Keys. And her landscaping is the most important part of her day. She loves her flowers, and she loves what the flowers do and how they look, and she loves when the neighbors come by and wave to her and their pretty flowers. And you get a chance to take care of those flowers. You get a chance to talk to Mrs. Betts and explain to Mrs. Betts that her flowers need fertilizer, that flowers need trimming, or hey, Mrs. Betts, you might need some new flowers. And you get to engage at that level with your customers. Is that meaningful for you? Okay, I tried three things. None of those are meaningful to you. You should probably go work in another job. So again, my point in going through that process is you can always find a way, regardless of the task, no matter how laborious that task may be, to engage the people through meaning. Meaning is there. Meaning is in everything. I mean, the book that I wrote, which you all know by now, is it's called Deemed Essential: Finding Greatness Through Serving Others. Anything you do in an element of serving can be meaningful, and anybody can be great because anybody can serve. So there you go. There's meaning, and you can see how important that is to hopefully motivate people. So some of the examples on this is meaningful for society, meaning for customers, meaning for a work group or team, and or themselves. So as you can see in the example I laid out, I didn't use the society example because our organization does have an impact on society. It pays tax money, and the building that we have has a footprint that has values in it, and we impact the society. But a lot of times companies can't necessarily see that direct correlation. So Aloy talked about how he works in the residential leasing industry, and he may not see how his efforts contribute to society, but somebody might be able to explain to him how it does, and how maintaining people's efficacy and ability to stay in their lease and not get evicted is a major element of improving society. Make sure that they have a safe place to live and raise their family, which their kids then become well educated, and they become constructive members of society. It makes sure that people aren't out on the street. You get the idea that there is a correlation there, but sometimes people find it hard to see that correlation or to see how their efforts impact society. So we as leaders can explain that to them, and we can explain to them till we're blue in the face, and they may not still get it. Okay, fine. Then you move on to the customer. Then you move on to the work group or team. And then one of the biggest things that it was a leadership tactic that we worked through, an influence tactic, is making an appeal to let them know what it will do for them. That yes, okay, you might not find any meaning in this, but if you continue working hard as a residential leasing agent, that you can eventually save some money. And that when you save some money, you're eventually going to be able to um, maybe quit your job or go work somewhere else, or you could move up in your career if you continue putting the time in. And there's a lot of opportunity in the real estate market to make a significant amount of money. So that's appealing to them and helping them find meaning for themselves in that situation. So meaning is very important. So this concept, moving from meaning, is relationship with the leader and employee engagement. So we've talked about this at nauseum. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. But the more that as a leader we speak to and build relationships with our team members, the more engaged they're going to be. We have a lot of power to influence them emotionally and psychologically in their work because we're their leaders. Seeing them as a whole person and having courageous conversations that will build trust. We talked a lot about trust last class. Using soft skills such as communication, recognition, mentoring, and caring is building a relationship with your staff members to help engage them, discussing career advancement opportunities, having high quality relationships with group members, and providing feedback on progress. We've seen this over and over again. I told you the story about how I would sit down with my staff members every year, and we'd set their personal goals, and I'd ask them how these personal goals, how the organization can help them with their personal goals. I tried to listen as much as I could to what's happening in your life. Let's talk about your goals, your financial goals, your career goals, your family goals, your fitness goals, whatever it is, and let me learn about them. Write them down, understand, okay, now how can the organization help you attain some of these things? Well, I really want to get in the gym every morning. Okay, so if somebody can cover work for you until 9 o'clock, you can come in at 9. Will that give you more time to go in the gym? Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. Okay, let's do it. And it's unbelievable how their if their personal goals can be attained under your leadership, how much harder they're going to work for you in those circumstances. And so let's just run that example forward. The person that was able to get that extra hour in the morning, they're supposed to come in at 8, but now they can come in at 9, and we covered for them during the work. They'll work either an extra hour in the evening, or the work that they're doing while they're there, it's more productive. They're not twiddling around on their iPhone the whole time, because now they feel like their work and is obviously more meaningful to them. So you can get the idea. They're more engaged because the boss has decided to build a personal relationship with them and know their goals and understand how the organization can help them with some of their personal goals. Okay, this is one of the two theories that we're going to talk about with motivation. And if you're as interested in motivation as I am, this theory will help you. And we're going to talk about this theory, and we're going to talk about goal theory. There's a lot of different motivation theories, but these two are the ones that this particular chapter breaks down. And so here's what we're going to do. There's three components of this. There's expectancy, instrumentality, and valence. And these are wild words, but they're not that complicated. And I want to do my best to decomplicate them. We're going to start with valence. And the reason why we start with valence is, again, I go back to that $100,000 if you win the spelling bee. Yes, there's an attractiveness of that outcome. Okay, I'm in. It's worth it. I want that outcome. Okay, so let's go down a little bit. Instrumentality is an individual's assessment of the probability that performance will lead to a certain outcome. So if I know if I perform on that spelling bee, that I'm going to get that outcome. That's basically what it means. It's so cool. I'm good with instrumentality. I'm good with outcome. Now we have expectancy. Okay, Claude, as an individual, when you assess yourself of the probability that if you put in effort of studying words to make sure you spell them really well between now and the time of the spelling bee, will your effort lead to correct performance of the task? Meaning, would you be able to actually win the spelling bee? And right now, I'm out. Like, no, I no matter how hard I try, I just don't believe that I can compete at that level. So obviously, we can use a couple of different examples here as well. So your boss says, I want to give you a promotion. Okay, great. Promotion would be awesome. Is it awesome? Let's think about that for a second. Do you value valence? Is the value of a promotion attractive to you? That's step number one. And remember, an outcome doesn't always have to be a promotion. It can be something negative. You just don't want to get fired. So the valence actually runs on a scale of minus 100 to 100. A zero valence means whatever that is, it's indifferent. It doesn't matter to me. I don't value it this way. I don't value it this way. It's indifferent. The outcome gives me no effect. A negative 80 valence is a really high valence saying, I'll do whatever I need to do for that not to happen. So even though the outcome, the valence of it, even though it's negative, I'll work really hard to make sure I avoid that. So it could be a negative outcome. And then from a positive outcome, if I go around this room and I say, hey, everybody works for Alloy in this room. We're all Alloy's employees, and I'm the HR manager. And Alloy has decided that he is going to give us two options. We all could have a $10,000 raise. That sounds great, right? Option number one. Option number two is we can have every Friday completely off. We only have to work a 32-hour work week. Or we can work a 40-hour work week and everybody gets a $10,000 raise. So which one would you vote for? And so the answer to your question demonstrates to everybody and to yourself what you value more. When I was 26 years old, I may have valued at $10,000. Now that I'm 40 and I have a family and I have some money saved away, getting Friday off would be a good deal. So my valence has changed. So here's the point, and this is a key point. If you're a manager or if you're a leader, if you're going to have an outcome for people, whatever that may be, that you believe is going to motivate them, you have to truly understand as to whether or not they value that outcome. And if each member in your team is different, which they are, some members are going to value it more than others. Discover those things. And if you're going to set goals for people, if you're going to try to motivate people, you have to set goals that they value or outcomes that they value, and not just automatically assume that everybody wants more money or automatically assume that everybody wants more time off or automatically assume that everybody wants a promotion. It's just not true. So that's outcome. I'll give you an example. People try to get you to sign up for things. If you sign up for this credit card, you'll get a 25% off this current purchase. Anybody ever fall victim to that scheme, or more importantly, say no, thank you? the the outcome with the credit card thing too was okay, you can get 25% off of this sale, which is a good deal. Say you're buying something that's $100, it's $25. But you also know that along with that, you're going to get a ton of email and you're going to have to sign a piece of paper and you're going to have to spend the next 10 minutes like filling something out. So the question is that $25 even worth it? She's got these goals at her work and that her boss is hopefully I'm going to give the boss the benefit of the doubt, like wanting to motivate. But the reality is that let's just say that in motivating her, it's like, hey, listen, perform hard here, do well, and you'll be recognized and rewarded, and you won't get in trouble, whatever that may be. And fair enough, but the amount of work that is needed to put in doesn't I don't see the value in the return that you just mentioned. So we had an example of a scenario in class where I asked the students that they had to put together 40 pieces of furniture that would typically take 14 days, and they had 10 days to do it. So they had to shave 4 days off of the time in which they put together this furniture. And I said, how would you motivate people? And immediately they said, oh, well, we'll just pay people more money. And I was like, okay, fair enough. How many people do you think are going to want more money in your team? They're like, everybody. And then I went around the room and I asked simply, like, okay, imagine you're a worker, you know, would you be willing to work 15-hour days if that would mean you would make more money? And half the class said no. So it's just like obvious that just because you offer somebody more money doesn't necessarily mean they're going to value it. And so I don't want to belabor this point, and I think we all know this, that when it comes to motivation, the outcome differs for all of us. And so now let's move to instrumentality, just to kind of understand that a little bit more. It sounds like a big word, but it's not. So instrumentality is an individual's assessment of the probability that the performance will lead to a certain outcome. So, all right, here's an interesting one. When Paula was talking in the class and she gave an example, and I'll embellish the example just for the sake of it. She said that maybe she was put on an assignment at work. And the assignment, I think she said she worked for pregnancy centers or something like that. And the assignment was to personally counsel and coach women who had gotten pregnant unexpectedly, whatever that may look like. And so she put her heart into it. She put a ton of effort into it. And in the process, she really did think that she was going to get acknowledged or somehow rewarded for it, or maybe just affirmed for her hard work. But it didn't happen. So then now she knows with instrumentality, the assessment of the probability that if she performed well, which let's just assume that she performed well, that it would lead to a certain outcome. So now she had that instrumentality. The instrumentality was motivating her because she thought maybe somebody would recognize her. But now, if she was asked to do an assignment equivalent to that, she would now know that, hey, I'm not sure if I want to do this because if I put all this hard work in, there's a good chance I'm not going to get rewarded. There's a good chance I'm not going to get any outcome. So, no, thank you, because my instrumentality isn't there. I don't see a pathway towards an outcome that I would care about. So, the answer is no, and I'm not motivated. So, that's what instrumentality means. And so now expectancy. So instrumentality is a big one too. I want to sit there for a second and see if anybody resonates with that. I'll give one more example to chew on and ponder. The in my in my line of work, we had somewhat vague discretionary bonuses what that I would give staff members. And the discretionary bonus was really meant for me. Like I was had all of the discretion as to whether or not I gave the bonus or didn't give the bonus. And so one day, a staff member came in and was expecting a bonus, and there was no chance I was giving the member a bonus. And unfortunately, because I didn't give the staff member the bonus, he then decided that he wasn't going to work hard anymore. Like he was just going to sort of quiet quit. And so, again, this is an example of he thought that he was going to get something by working hard, and he didn't. So his instrumentality was then weakened. Does that make sense? And if you just believe that the hard work you're putting into something, even if you weren't burnt in the past, let's remove that, like, not getting burnt, meaning when we put in the hard work, um, maybe putting in the hard work, there's no system around the organization to even see the hard work you're doing, to even so an organization that my father and I own, obviously, if I put in the hard work, the goal is to eventually the company is going to earn more profit. It was very clear to see that the work that I was putting in had some sort of meaning to it. But if a staff member of mine decided that they were going to redesign the website and to do all this amazing things, and then, why would they do that? Is what I'm trying to say. Why would they work until midnight for 5 hours a week to revamp the website if they weren't making any additional money? They wouldn't see any instrumentality in it. They wouldn't know. It would be no reason to do it because they knew that they probably weren't going to get recognized. So why would they do it to begin with? So as leaders and managers, what we can do is we can set up systems, we can set up control systems so that we can really truly understand what are these goals, and that we can track the staff members' performance to attain these goals, and we can very easily notice when they're doing things well, and we can reward them for it. And that's what's so important to understand too, that if we promise that we're going to reward employees or that there will be an outcome, we better deliver, because the promise is going to potentially motivate them if they find value or valence in the outcome. And then if we don't give them the outcome that we promise them, that's going to crush the motivation of the team. So that's a good lesson. And then the last one, of course, expectancy. This word, it goes with this other word called self-efficacy. And it's important to understand this one. And so let me explain this. Um, High expectancies mesh with the contributions of self-efficacy, the confidence in your ability to carry out specific tasks. So I didn't even really understand what self-efficacy was until about 6 or 7 years ago, but it doesn't have, it has confidence with my ability to perform a task, not just general confidence. If you put me on stage with a bunch of people that knew how to spell, I have very little self-efficacy on how to spell supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. It's just like I'd be like a deer in the headlights. So because I have low confidence with completing that task, I'm not going to complete it to begin with. So here's what I'm trying to say. Let's get out of that example for a second. You have wonderful staff members that work for you and your team. It's amazing. But if you tell them that they're going to do something, and if you ask them to do something, and you tell them that there's going to be reward when you do it, if they don't even know where to start, they don't even know where to look, they don't have any resources, and they've never been coached up on how to do what you ask them to do, the chances of them being motivated to do that task is nil. It's zero. So we have to, this is where training comes in. Building up staff members' self-efficacy only comes through practice. So police officer, I'm a police officer, and I'm trained for, let's just say, 6 months. Then you put me in a squad car. And by that time, I have a lot of self efficacy on what it's like to have a traffic stop. Like I understand the procedures and understand how to do it. On week 3, if you put me in the car, in a squad car, and you told me to go perform a traffic stop, my self efficacy is low. And I'm probably not going to do a good job there. And I'm not going to be very motivated to do a good job either, because I'm sort of lost. So self efficacy has a lot to do with the expectancy. Do I even know that if I put in the effort here, that I'm going to be able to do it well? And if I do it well, will I get a reward that I value? So this is where it all starts. And this self-efficacy is so important because it really translates into a lot of other things. So that's kind of a high level view on that, and kind of get off of expectancy theory because I can keep going on and on. It's a beautiful theory because it really combines a lot of different motivational tactics. And I think it's a good one. So leadership skills and behaviors associated with expectancy. So I'm going to read these. I think it's important. What does it all mean? It means we need to determine what levels and kinds of performance are needed to achieve organizational goals. It means we need to make the performance level attainable by the individuals being motivated. The goal can't be too crazy. It means we need to train and encourage people, build up their self-efficacy, make explicit the link between rewards and performance. So this is instrumentality. You got your expectancy, which is your self-efficacy. Instrumentality means, hey, if you do well here, you will get the performance goal. Make sure they know those two things are linked. Make sure the rewards are significant enough. Significant enough means they value it. It's not just a pat on the back once you work 100 hours overtime. No, it's time and a half and a pat on the back and a promotion. It's like more than just a pat on the back if I work 100 hours of overtime. Analyze what factors work in opposition to the effectiveness of the reward. So what does that mean? Analyze what factors work in opposition to the effectiveness of the reward. That means go and ask questions. See where people are struggling. See where the self-efficacy or the expectancy because of self-efficacy is lacking. See if people understand that the behaviors and the performance will lead to reward. You're doing research essentially into what's going on with my staff members. People in my principles of business class ask me sometimes, they say, Professor Krishna, can you just tell me how to get the people to do what I want them to do? And I'm like, well, you I could I could teach you a whole class on it, and you still won't be able to get people to do what you want them to do unless you understand that it's a process, unless you understand that individuals are individuals, everybody's different, unless you understand valence, unless you understand instrumentality, unless you understand expectancy, unless you know how to put these things together and have conversations with your staff members along all three of these realms. You got to train them well. You got to hire the right people. You got to make sure you have a reward system in place. And then when you have the reward system in place, you need to deliver on the reward. And when you deliver on the reward, you need to ask, is this the reward that you wanted? And if so, do you want to do it again? And so it's a process. can't just give them the magic pill to make people do what you want them to do. It's way more than that. Explain the meaning and implications of second level outcomes. So this is a fun one. A second level outcome means that if I get a good performance review, so what? Like I'm 41 years old. Thank you for the good performance review. It means nothing to me. Okay, awesome. But if I knew that that good performance review, if I get two in a row at whatever level, say I get a 5 out of 5 on the two different performance reviews, that is going to put me in contention for promotion. And with the promotion, I get additional benefits, additional pay. Okay, now I care about the performance review. So sometimes these smaller goals or the valances that you give them, like you'll get a good performance review, you need to connect those outcomes to second level outcomes. Like it's good for you to get a good performance review so that you can get a promotion, so that you can get more exposure, so that you can have more impact, so that your job will be more meaningful. You may need to abstract it at a couple of different levels. And again, this insinuates that you got to ask questions. Do you know that if you get a good performance review that you can get a promotion? And so these are second level outcomes that we should be talking about. These are individual differences and balance. All that means is that some people value the $10,000, some people value the day off. There's individual differences. We need to be aware of those individual differences. Okay, so we talked about goal, we talked about goal theory, and so we're going to talk about this for a second. We all know goals are important, and we'll say it this way. Earl Nightingale, wonderful speech that this gentleman has given. If you want to Google something and watch something that's pretty edifying, it is Earl Nightingale talks about success. Earl Nightingale success, something like that. Or Earl Nightingale setting goals. And he had this talk, it's from like the 1980s or something. And what he basically said, and I think I may have said it in this class, that success is defined as the ability to set and attain goals, which means that it's almost impossible for us even to say what success is unless we define what success looks like and unless we're proceeding on our way towards it. And then, by the way, what happens when you attain a goal? Does that mean you've arrived and you're successful? That's a new goal. This is the point that even achieving goals does not necessarily mean success. So again, I'll define it. Success is the ability to set and move towards attaining goals, the ability to set and achieve goals continuously. It's not one-time thing, it's all the time. Success is the ability to set and work towards attaining those goals. So it's progress. It's not an end state. You can't just lay back one day and say, "Oh, success, here I am," because the next day you still got to wake up and you still might be in pain and you still have that relationship that you're struggling with. It's a never-ending process. So values, what does values mean? Values is where it starts. In an organization, you're going to have a set of values, and every individual brings a set of values to the organization too. So values could be my values are faith, family, leadership, and strength, and it's internal strength like perseverance and adaptability, fortitude. This is what's important to me. So I join an organization. That organization also has values, and there's a high likelihood that the reason why I join that organization is because I sort of jive with their values. So my values and the organization's values are going to determine what kind of goals we set. So what's very important for us before we set goals, and this is in any executive coaching format, in any coaching format whatsoever, where you're trying to help somebody, you have to understand, I'll just say it from my perspective, I would have to understand your values before I help you set goals. And by the way, they're going to be your goals, but I'm going to challenge you on your goals if they don't correspond with your values. Let me try to be more specific. I had a goal of going and visiting my mother at some point. This was when I was getting leadership coaching, and this was 8 years ago. And the reason why I wanted to visit my mom was because I was scared that she was going to die. She was going through a difficult phase in her life, and my mom has since passed away. But regardless, she I was scared. That's why I wanted to go visit my mom. And my leadership coach looked at me and she goes, "Fair enough. Like that's admirable." And she said, "Claude, I don't think that's a reason to go visit your mom." And I go, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "Well, what do you mean scared? Like, why would that make you want to go visit your mom? Why is that a goal of yours to go visit your mom because you're scared?" And I said, "Well, I think she's going to die." I said, "Okay, let's back up for a second." She said, "What are your values?" And I said, "Well, faith, family, leadership, and strength." And she goes, "Okay, family. Think about that for a second. Visiting your mom, would that help you live out that value of family?" And I'm like, yeah, that would help me live out that value of family. And she goes, "Okay, let's reframe that goal. And let's say that because you value family, that buying a plane ticket to go visit your mom is something that you should do. And I was like, whoa, just that one little transition of framing my goals around my values made that goal much more important. It made it much more doable and it made it much more meaningful to me. I'm not visiting my mom because I'm scared she's going to die. I'm visiting my mom because I love her and she's part of my family. And by the way, family is one of my values. So that's why I'm visiting my mom. So you can see how the point of me explaining that to you is how intricate values are in the goal setting process. So now we understand how values are tied to goals. So again, I go back to if you're going to approach this conversation about goals, we have to talk about the values of the organization. Do the goals that we set correspond with the values of the organization? Okay, yes, they do. All right, cool. Now we have these 16 goals within the organization. What values do I have that correspond with one of those 16 goals? Meaning, I want to work on that goal. Why do you want to work on that goal? Well, because these are my values. That's why I want to work on that goal. So we know now that the organization has values, that the goals should be centered on the organization's values, and we know we should learn about the staff members' values. And why is that important? Because we should try to get the staff members to align with the right kinds of goals so they'll be motivated because those goals align with their personal values. Okay. There's a lot there, but it's really important because goal setting is a motivational tactic and it's extremely important to get it right as leaders because we can get it wrong. Goals have to be specific, they have to be hard but realistic. Meaning a goal that's too easy, a goal that says, hey, you just need to show up to class tonight and you know, just listen. That's really not that hard. Like, okay, great. But goal is to show up to class tonight, answer questions, and do a role play. Like it's a little bit more of a challenge. Is it realistic? Yeah, but it's a little bit harder. So that's going to push you a little bit more during those classes. Accepted by the person. This is a great one. Forcing your goal because you have authority or because you have dominion over somebody as a leader is never a good idea. I mean, sometimes it's needed, understandably, but if you want somebody to be motivated by a goal, they have to accept the goal. They have to take on the goal themselves. This is the whole point of the Socratic method is asking questions. What do you want to do for a living? Well, I want to be a doctor. Great. What med school do you want to go to? Well, I want to go to Villanova Med School. Okay, when are you going to start your SAT training? And you're like, oh, I'm going to start my SAT training tomorrow. Okay, cool. I'll pay for it for you. So that was a parent talking to a child about their future. The parent has been trying for years and years and years to get the kid to focus on studying for the SATs, but they weren't able to do it. So they asked a series of questions that made it their goal, not the parent's goal, but their goal. And it's accepted by them. Powerful concept because they're going to take that ball and run with it. Used to evaluate performance, linked to feedback and rewards. That's a big one. Set by individuals or groups and learning oriented. So now we have goals. Values now we have goals. And typically, this graph is so elementary, but it's so profound at the same time. Typically, if done well, if the values correspond with organizational goals, individual goals, if the goals are set right, they improve performance. So let's see what the book has to say about it. Leaders, as well as other workers, might take unethical and dysfunctional shortcuts to attain goals. That's something to look out for. That's called an unintended consequence. That if we set a goal, these are some things to consider when we set goals, that people might act unethically to attain them. There's a story in the book about a gentleman from Wells Fargo that the goal of all of the people at Wells Fargo that were selling accounts was to sell as many new bank accounts as possible. And this is how they were evaluated on how many new account holders had bank accounts. Okay, great. Thank you so much. What happened was they were opening up these fictitious bank accounts under people's names that don't even exist, and they were forcing bank accounts on people that didn't even need them. And so there was extreme amounts of just unethical behavior happening because the leader of the organization set a goal that they thought was going to be motivational, but it had people act counterproductive and created dysfunction with the organization, and they were sued big time over the dysfunction, and it was an unintended consequence of a goal. So this is a big deal to think about. Think about it this way: you have a salesperson that is incentivized to sell. Okay, awesome. You think that's a great goal? Hey, you need to sell $100,000 this month. Wonderful. The problem with that is they could sell $100,000 worth of stuff that cost $150,000 to deliver. What does it matter? They sold $100,000 worth of stuff. Well, the pricing that they gave was extremely low. So that's a problem. So it can't just be, hey, you have to sell $100,000 worth of stuff. It has to be, you have to sell $100,000 of stuff. And here are some additional rules along with this goal. Here are some boundaries and some ways in which we have to go about it. So just because we have a goal, which is important, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to lead to the behaviors that we want to have. To implement goal setting without creating dysfunctions, essentially to specify how goals will be attained with focus on ethical behavior. I just mentioned that. Use of financial incentives for attaining goals often encourages unethical behavior. Focus on attaining goals might result in neglecting emergency opportunities. In pursuing commissions, other aspects of sales positions might be ignored. So I told you the story about the Good Samaritan. I may have told that to you, but it comes to mind here is that if people are so focused on their goal, and the story about the Good Samaritan was the experiment that they did at the university where they told these were people that were in seminary and were training to become pastors. And what they were asked to do is they were asked to deliver a sermon. This experiment cracks me up every time. They were asked to deliver a sermon to students about the Good Samaritan. The Good Samaritan is like there's a Levi and a Levi and a Gentile and somebody else on the road or passing by the road. And there was a person that was sick and disorderly on the side of the road. And there were three different people passed by, and it was the Samaritan person who looked at the person, actually helped him out, took him to the hotel, fed him, clothed him, gave him money, and sent him on the way. The only one person did it, and that's the Good Samaritan, because they helped the person on the side of the road. So then that's the story in the I think it's the New Testament. But the student was asked to give a sermon on that story, right? And on the way to the lecture hall, they injected this thing called motivation. Now we're talking about a goal, and the goal had to do with what time the sermon started. So they either knew that the sermon started at 10 o'clock or 10:30, and they would call the person about 5 minutes before they thought the sermon was going to start and say, "Hey, you have to be here now." Um, basically enticing them to now be rushed to go to the sermon. So the people who were rushed, they purposely put a person that needed help on the road on their path to deliver the sermon. So on the way to deliver a sermon about helping a good Samaritan, they completely ignored the person that needed help on the way because they were rushed. It was like 85% of them just like walked right past them because they were so focused on the goal of getting to the message on time. So that obviously is an interesting story, but the people who were not rushed, about 50% of them stopped to help. And so, what's the point of the story? The point of the story is if you give a person a goal, what happens is they really see the world through those goals. And this is what a lot of us have to do. I mean, right now, I see the world through delivering a good um, leadership chapter 10 lecture and why this is important. So that's how I see the world, and I ignore everything else. So in at work, when you assign a goal to a person, you have to know that when you assign a goal to a person, that person really wants to attain the goal. They're going to put on blinders and they're going to ignore their friends and they're going to ignore coworkers and they're going to ignore the other teams because they're focused on the goal. So that could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing, something to take into consideration. In pursuing commissions, other aspects of sales position might be ignored because they're so bent on those commissions. Motivating others with recognition and praise is a direct application. Okay, so now we're moving to recognition. So top five reasons why this is 2015, so it's a bit old, but you can understand. Top five reasons why people leave their jobs. Number one is they leave because of career advancement opportunities. There's not enough of them. They leave because they're unsatisfied with senior management, leaders, and the work environment. That's number two. The second most important is they're just simply unsatisfied. Number three is they desire more challenging work. Number four is unsatisfied with compensation, which is further down on the list. And number five is unsatisfied with a lack of rewards and or recognition. So just to know that one of the top reasons why people leave their jobs is because they're not getting recognized or not getting rewarded. So the seven biggest inhibitors of morale is employee isolation, cutthroat competition, use of threat versus reward approach, employees are undervalued, unchallenging tasks, oppressive supervisors, lack of office and workplace pride. I'm going through this because this is the main slide I wanted to get to. So a lot of times leaders think that people leave because they're not getting paid enough money. That's number one. They also think people are leaving because they don't have job security. Or this is what do employees value in the workplace? So this is what leaders think employees value. Leaders think employees value fair wages. They think employees value job security. They think employees value promotion. They think employees value good working conditions, and they think employees value interesting work. Fair enough. Like those are good things. Those are important. That's what leaders think. But when asked to employees, and the employees' answers are almost inverse. Yes, job security is important here too, but the number one thing is they want to have full appreciation of the work that's done. Number one, full appreciation of work done, feeling informed, information about what's happening in the job, sympathetic help on personal problems, job security number four, and fair wages number five. So if that's the case, if this is absolutely true, reinforcement is something that leaders need to learn how to do. Positive reinforcement is the process of encouraging or establishing a pattern of behavior through encouragement or reward. So if you remember from your psychology classes, this guy named B.F. Skinner, he had a lot of experiments, one being Pavlov's dog. And he basically started this concept called classical conditioning. And I know it seems like it's we're not dogs, we're not rats, like don't treat us like that. But at the same time, it works. And it works in many ways. And let me explain. But just a fun example that I'll use with my wife. My wife does three things. She'll either reward me, there will be an extinction, like there's no reward, or she'll punish me. So those are the three things I get for doing good, not doing good. So again, reward me means affirmation, recognition, thank you. I love when you do that. Extinction is I do something and she doesn't say anything. Like I expect something, maybe she's going to say thank you or whatever, but says nothing. And then the third one is I do something, but I do it wrong, and she actively punishes me for it. She tells me it's not good, or she kicks me in the butt, or whatever it may be. So in reality, this shapes the way that I move throughout my household. And so I'll give you an example. My wife really, really likes it when I give the kids a tub at night, and it's something that she really likes. So what I'll do is I'll give the kid a tub, and when I'm done giving the tub, she tells me thank you and she praises me for it. What she doesn't really care for me doing is she doesn't care when I unstack and stack the dishwasher. She doesn't really care. So she doesn't thank me, and she doesn't reward me. Nothing happens. So my point is that I do less of it. Like there's no reward there. So obviously I do it if I have to do it, but I'm more motivated to give my kids a tub because I get a reward. And then obviously the things that she doesn't want me to do, or the things that she's annoyed with me doing or that I get punished for, is when I allow our dog to sleep on the couch, or when I walk through the house with mud or something like that. And I know this sounds silly, but after being married for 7 years, it's changed the way I behave. Like she's figured out a way to classically condition me to doing the things that she wants me to do, not because she's manipulating me, but because I genuinely want her to reward me. And so this is the point, and I hope that example kind of resonates with you in some regard. And I'm trying to be authentic and vulnerable because we can do this in the workplace too. We can thank people and reward people for a job well done. We should be thanking them and rewarding them for the work that they do that aligns with the organization's goals and aligns with the department's goals. So motivating others with recognition and praise is a direct application of positive reinforcement. Recognition programs to reward and motivate employees are standard practice. People proud of their work want to be recognized for their good deeds. Recognition is a strong motivator because it is a normal human need to want recognition. Engagement increased when workers feel they are cared for and valued, and most workers feel they do not receive enough recognition. So that this should tell you that just writing a note with this recognition aspect of motivation is just write a note to the people on your team that you value the most and tell them why you value them. If it's your family member, your friend, or your brother, just take a moment, write down their name on a piece of paper now, and remember to just tell them thank you, to praise them, be as specific as possible as to why it is that you appreciate them and that you are affirming them, and send it to them. And it makes a difference. Recognition should be linked to corporate values. Inform others in the group about the meritocracy of their behavior. Meritorious behavior. I told you the spelling. Do not use praise to set employees in competition against one another. That's something to avoid. Take into account the individual's preference for the type of praise. This is an interesting one. Some people don't want to be praised in front of other people. Like that public recognition is not something that they care for. It'll actually embarrass them. So just be cautious of that. Teams as well as individuals should receive recognition to enhance motivation. So I'm gonna read these because I think it's important to read, and then I'm gonna talk about coaching, and then we'll be done. Um, Again, so let me try to summarize and let me try to make sure this makes sense to you because we moved into a chapter from understanding teams to now how do we coach and motivate people at work? And why is motivation important? And we unpacked a few reasons why. We talked about expectancy. We talked about performance based on motivation. We talked about goals. We talked about employee engagement. Why is engagement good? And so some of the tools we have is that expectancy theory, understanding valence and instrumentality and expectancy, all this kind of stuff. And then we move to what would be considered goals. Why is it important to use goals? And how do we use goals well? And the third one that we're talking about here is recognition. What is recognition? Why is it important? And how does it make an impact on the motivation of our staff members? And I just, again, want to go back to motivation and want to go back to specifically recognition is that the entire program that we work on with LDR is based on this coaching model. And a coaching model is all about recognition and praise. It's about catching other people doing things right and thanking them for it. It's not, there's a progressive discipline model involved in it as well, where if people are doing something wrong, you have to correct them, of course. And if they do it again, then it's like another level, another level, another level. But most of the time, if you just catch people doing something right and you thank them for it, they're going to do more of it. Again, I go back to the example of me giving my daughters a tub. She catches me doing something right and she thanks me for it. She praises me for it. So what am I going to do? I'm going to do more of it. It's a natural thing, and leaders have the ability to do that. So recognition should be linked to, we did that one. Principle of giving recognition with thanks for a job well done and expressing gratitude has received considerable recent attention by leadership writers. Gratitude is more meaningful as a leadership tool because money is limited. This is a big thing too, is it's free. Nobody's putting a price tag on your ability to give recognition and affirm your staff members. It doesn't cost you anything. Easy approach to giving thanks and expressing gratitude is a compliment. People underestimate how much recipients appreciate gratitude. Begin team meetings with shout outs and accomplishments for specific team members. So if you are looking for ideas to start an icebreaker on a team meeting, just do the first 5 minutes of affirmations. What you do is you go around a circle, I'll start. So you just basically go around the room and you just allow people to affirm one another. And I'm sure they can think through and it's a great way to start a meeting because then everybody gets a little bit of a dopamine hit, at the beginning of the day, at the beginning of the meeting. And I think it's pretty cool. Okay, begin team meetings with shoutouts. Other team members will work hard to receive similar accolades in the future. Giving recognition for a job well done helps satisfy the desire to feel proud. So now we're appealing to people's pride. Pride in a job well done is an intrinsic motivator. It's something that you're not giving. You can't be giving of pride. People establish a pride internally, and therefore they're motivated intrinsically. These are things that they don't necessarily need external reward for. They're internally motivated. They do it because they want to do it because they want to do it, not because you're telling them to do it or you're affirming them doing it or you're giving them money to do it. They're doing it because they want to do it. I'll just give you one quick funny story on this difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. There was um, there was a group of kids that were playing soccer outside of the store owner's shop, and the store owner just bought the store and he was now operating a business. But every morning, these kids would be outside playing soccer. So what he decided to do is he decided to go out there and tell the kids, "Oh man, you guys are great. Thank you so much for playing soccer here. I'm going to give each one of you $2 to come back here tomorrow morning and play soccer. Like if you come back here tomorrow morning, I'll give you $2." So they're like, "For sure, we'll come here tomorrow morning and play soccer." So they came back the next morning. The shop owner gave all the kids $2. They said, "Great." So that end of that day, the shop owner said, "Thank you. As the kids are about to leave, thank you so much again for playing here today. Come back tomorrow and play, and I'll give every single one of you $1." The kids are like, "Okay, fine, $1, whatever." So they go home, they come back the next day, the shop owner gives them all $1. And so once they're done playing that day, the shop owner finally says to them, "Okay, you guys, great job playing today. I appreciate you being here. When you come back tomorrow, I'll give each one of you 25 cents to come back here tomorrow to play." And all the kids look at each other and go, "What? 25 cents? What are you talking? That's so cheap. Why aren't you giving us $2 or $1 like you did? We're not even going to come back here tomorrow. We don't want your 25 cents." And the kids never came back again to play soccer at the store. So what does that mean? It means that once you introduce extrinsic motivation to something that people were intrinsically motivated to do, it demotivates them. It could potentially demotivate them. I'll give you one other example. I would travel to the Everglades Correctional Institution to teach, and my commute time was never paid for. I would pay for it out of pocket. And then they introduced compensation. They were going to pay me for my travel time back and forth from the prison. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. So they started paying me for it. And then one month, the funding dried up and they weren't able to pay for travel that month. And this is after like a year of getting, I think it was like 20 bucks a week or something like that. So it's at the end of the month, you like get it, 100 and some bucks. It's a good deal. So they said, no, you're not going to get that anymore. And so I was like, well, what do you mean I'm not going to get it? I don't even want to teach at the prison anymore. That was my first thought. Like, why would I drive to the prison if I'm not going to get paid for my compensation? So again, those two stories tell me that at times we need to understand why people are intrinsically motivated to do what they do, and you don't necessarily have to reward them for it. You don't have to necessarily introduce an extrinsic motivator because they're intrinsically motivated to do it. Receiving a gift or bonus is an extrinsic motivator. Workers can experience pride in relation to recognition symbols. Managers may find their focus should be on pride, not money, as their primary motivating tactic. Good to recognize the small achievements that will instill pride in the people. All right, so I'm gonna turn the camera off, and I guess I coaching, and I'm gonna make this brief because I could probably go on for another 2 hours with coaching, but it's important we understand this. Coaching is a great form of leadership. It's different than anything we've talked about so far. Because what it means is that you're coming alongside of somebody. It means that if anybody in this room right now has had a good coach in their life, you know what that's like. It's a person that, again, we talked about in the beginning of class, that calls you out, that brings out the best in you, that challenges you, but also knows you well enough to know when you need to slow down. Coaching is a deeply intimate relationship, but it's also a defined relationship. It's not a therapeutic relationship. It's not a counselor. It's a coach. A coach means that you have a goal. You get into the presence of that coach. The coach is going to help you attain that goal. And the only thing the coach is supposed to do is to figure out what your professional goal is and your whatever your goals are, and to be a pathway for you to attain that goal and to hold you accountable to attain that. That's all a coach is. And we all need those coaches in our lives, and coaches make a big difference. And if, as a leader, if we can come alongside of people and be that coach to them, it's an extremely motivational factor in leadership. So, what do good coaches do? Good coaches define the issues and communicate clear expectations to group members. Good coaches build relationships. Good coaches give feedback on areas that require specific improvement. Good coaches provide regular on the spot feedback on what is going well. Good coaches listen actively. Good coaches help remove obstacles. Good coaches give emotional support and empathy. Good coaches work on a solution together with their people that they're coaching. Good coaches reflect content or meaning. Good coaches give some gentle advice and guidance. Good coaches allow for modeling of desired performance and behavior. What does that mean? It means that sometimes the coach themselves, you think about, I played football and it was really wonderful to have my coach tell me how to tackle somebody. Thank you so much. But it was even better when my coach would demonstrate the form tackle, would show me and get under it and then say, okay, now you try. Let's get under it. I'm going to show you and then you do it. Coaches can do that. And a lot of times with the role plays, that's kind of what, we did too. We watched it and then we try to do it ourselves at work. Um, Gain a commitment to change. That's what coaches do. Coaches applaud good work. Congratulations, you did a good job. Good results, good work. They applaud this kind of stuff. Research evidence with sales representatives show that coaching by leaders and managers has tangible effort on performance. Coaching skill is rated by managers, direct boss, and their regional supervisors. Managers' coaching skill was directly related to annual sales goal. Clarity about job expectations helped attain the good results. Okay, let me summarize. Gosh, it takes way longer than sometimes I think to go through the content because it's such good content. We're all leaders here in this room, whether you know it or not. And your ability to be influential in your leadership will be contingent on your understanding of human motivation. Knowing yourself is so very important. And then knowing others is equally as important if you're going to be a leader. And to think about how not only you know how to motivate yourself, how to set up a routine, how to get into your area of strength, to help somebody else do that as well by getting to know them and getting them into their own strength and getting them into their own zone of performance, helping them set and achieve goals is extremely motivational. If we all closed our eyes right now and we thought about the best leaders we've had in the past, those are the leaders that made us better. And by making somebody better, you have to tie into their emotion. And tie into their emotion ties into their motivation, ties into their ability to perform. And we can do this. We can help people set goals. We can define this thing called expectancy. We can see if they're capable of doing it. We can link performance goals to performance rewards to we can link rewards to performance, and we can certainly give them the outcome that they deserve. And then in addition to that, we could we get the expectancy, you got goal setting, we can coach them up along the way, and we can affirm them and recognize them along the way. So let's think about this. You got a leader that understands your capabilities, can train you up, build that self-efficacy, knows how to tie outcomes to rewards. So if you do this, if you perform well here, I'll give you this reward. Also knows that the reward is something that you value. Wow, that's incredible. In addition to that, with all that information they gathered, they help you set goals that push you a little bit, but aren't going to overwhelm you. And along the way, they help you attain those goals that are directly tied to your values and directly tied to the values of the organization. And then when you attain those goals, they applaud you. And all along the way, they're affirming you, they're recognizing you, and in addition to that, they're coaching you. And they do that for 2 or 3 years. Not only will the organization benefit, not only will your team benefit, not only will you benefit, I think the society will benefit, and we'll find our work to be a little bit more meaningful. So there's my pitch on chapter 10, which is coaching and motivation. And I hope that was in some way inspirational to you, because it was certainly and still remains to be a lifelong mission of mine to understand this content and to be able to motivate people like you that I'm teaching and trying to make better. So with that, that's the last chapter of leadership that we will cover as far as content. I will let you go. I'm in New York City tonight and this weekend with my wife, so we're gonna go have dinner. Um, we have no kids to give tubs to, so that'll be fun.
It's
And
inspirational when you reflect on some of these leaders that one might consider to be heroes and think about their lives